Welcome to Science Online. My name is Chris. To continue the Maple Madness, we are going to go right ahead and... Ooh, I got stuff going on. Things are popping up everywhere. Anyway, hi, I'm Chris. Welcome to Science Online, Maine State Library. We're going to almost, but not quite, get to making the maple tree sap we collected into maple syrup. We're so close. After today, there is only one more step. So close. We're so close. All right. So we have talked about how historically we have tapped trees with a metal tap, a hammer, and some metal buckets, and you would have to go and collect all the metal buckets. We have gone over how most producers collect it now, which is through either a vacuum or a plastic tube system. And now we're going to talk about what we do when we collect all that sap. This is the sap that we have collected. So these are each, they come about mid-waist to me. They collect almost 300 gallons a piece. That is a week and a half of the sap running. Some of them froze a little bit. All of our plastic tubes that we talked about last week all drain into these two buckets. They're massive. I can fully sit on one. Like they're so big. So this is the tree sap. It comes directly from the tree into the tap, down the tube. Tubes run into these buckets. And then on the weekends, what we do is, yeah, good, it's on the phone. So what's happening is this is a pump. What we're doing is we're pumping the sap up the hill, because everything has to be up the hill somehow. And what happens is we are putting it into a second container. Now what's going to happen is we're going to use this container. This is my lovely sister who's going to help me take the shot. What we're going to do is once we get into that container, we're going to do something called reverse osmosis. No, I don't want to go again. Next one. No. There we go. Reverse osmosis. Now, what reverse osmosis is we've talked a couple of times, but I've never really elaborated, that when you get sap directly from a tree, there's a lot of water. And in order to reduce and evaporate that water, we have to use energy and fuel to create the maple syrup. Maple syrup is basically just tree sap that has been evaporated to the point that it creates like a sticky syrup. Like, has anybody ever left out like coffee or something really oogy overnight? You look in the mug and you're like, oh, that's disgusting. It's the same idea. So what reverse osmosis is just like those giant, have you seen like the jug filters that you can get for your faucet? Those are called osmosis filters. And basically all it does is it's a super strong filter that scrubs minerals, particles, things that you may not want to drink out of your water. And then it takes all of that extra ickies, the concentrate, and it gets rid of it. Well, the reason it's called reverse osmosis is we're getting rid of the water that most people keep to drink out of their tap, but we're keeping the stuff that we filtered out, because that filtered out stuff contains all of our sugar. And that's what we want, because that sugar is going to get us the maple syrup. Now, I want you all to know I got to make this, and I'm very proud of it because I got to use my pretty markers. Okay, so what happens is this is my tree. We've talked about our tap. The taps all go into my giant 275-gallon containers, and then that goes into a high-pressure pump. Now, this is the first set of filtration, okay? And that gets out the bigger particles. Now, when I say bigger particles, I'm talking stuff that we still probably can see, but they're very, very tiny. And usually it's like little pieces of bark or something that just happen to get in. And then what happens is in this high pressure pump, it pushes all of that tree sap through all of these filters. Now, this is one version that I thought we were getting. If you go back and look at the picture before, you'll see that big white tower. That big white tower is actually just all of these, but stacked on top of each other in a big white fiberglass casing. And what happens is by pushing it through at high speed, or at high pressure rather, we can take out and collect, or rather separate, all of the sugars, which we want to keep, from the pure water. And what happens is we get permeate, which is the pure water. And again, you can drink it. When we were flushing, I just like had some to drink. It's fine. It actually tastes really good. I was hoping for more of a maple flavor, but alas, because all of the maple flavor is in the sugar, which we get here. Now, I wrote syrup. I meant to put sap. This is concentrated sap, and I keep using sap and syrup interchangeably, and I'm sorry. However, once we get to this point, this is not yet maple syrup, because now what we have to do is we're going to boil it. And I'm on the wrong picture. There we go. Okay. So now, remember how you guys saw all those buckets? This is the tree sap that we have pumped up from where all of our trees go. Because again, everything flows downhill. We use gravity. So we have pumped it into here. What's going to happen is inside our sugar shack, which is, I think, 4 months old at this point, so we don't have siding on it, forgive us. It's a very new system. Inside this RO is going to have 2 giant hoses. One is going to come out and it's going to fill up our permeate, which is now our wastewater, which I think is funny that our water is wasted. And then our concentrate, which is going to be up here. We actually pump it up into the top, and I'll show you why in a few minutes. This concentrate is what is going to become our maple syrup. Okay, now don't worry, we don't just open up this right here and say, oh, we don't want this anymore, let's just get rid of it. We actually keep all of that permeate, or the clean water, and that's how we clean and sanitize all of our systems. It's how we flush our systems. So it's 100% usable and drinkable. But again, this is the stuff that we want. This is the good stuff. And again, all it is we have just removed that water, so that way it takes less time and less energy, which both saves us money and saves us time, to make the maple syrup. So this is part of our setup. I stole this picture from my sister. She took it. It's just a cool picture. Look at the fire. It's so hot. So maple syrup boils at a higher temperature than water. Not a lot, but definitely a few more degrees. So that means that when you are trying to boil something, the water evaporates and you're left with the sugars that kind of solidify and get stickier and a little oogier. You guys have all poured out maple syrup, right? You know how viscous it is. Well, that's what we're doing. We're taking out the water. Now, before we used reverse osmosis, this would take hours. It would take days. It was non-stop, and you would use so much propane or so much wood. But now instead, I think we use 1/3 or 2/3 less wood. I don't know. It's a new setup. I don't really know the numbers yet. But we don't use as much wood, and it doesn't take as much time to produce maple syrup. So what's going to happen now is this is our setup, the setup that we use. Now you can see right here, this is maple syrup, or tree sap rather. This is the tree sap. It's a float, and that float holds this at a constant level. That warms it, and this is where the evaporation happens. And then this is our let-off valve. My stepdad actually bought a solenoid. A solenoid is a new word for you. Solenoid just means it's kind of like an automatic door that opens and closes, kind of like a sprinkler system. A lot of sprinkler systems have a solenoid. Now, if you look right down there, and I wish that was on so you could see it, that goes to our temperature gauge. You can see up here. And when our soon-to-be syrup, not quite yet, but almost soon-to-be syrup, gets to, I believe we had it set at 212 degrees, which means that it is at the right viscosity, the right density, that it's almost maple syrup, it releases and puts it into a bucket. There's no bucket right there because this was like for our pre-boil. We were just cleaning everything. Boop. And basically this is what a day is like when you're at the sugar shack. Like once you've done the reverse osmosis and the tree sap starts to be boiled, there's a lot of just hanging out and putting wood in the fire and waiting patiently for the sap to turn into syrup. There's a lot of waiting and there's a lot of boiling. And what you see here, it's not a waste project, it's not smoke. That's actually all just steam. That's all of the water evaporating from the tree sap to make it condense, to make it thicker, and to create maple syrup. Oop, apparently I put it in twice, but that's okay. Bloop. There we go. And this is my favorite part. And I think if you turn it up, you should be able to hear it. Remember how I was talking about the celluloid? Well, what happens is that this syrup has now been evaporated. See the color change, and it is at the correct temperature that that solenoid or that gate opens up, lets out a certain amount of the near sap, almost. It's so close. It tastes like maple syrup right now. I'm not gonna lie. We might have stuck a ladle in and had a little taste. But what happens is that solenoid has opened up and it's dropped it into the bucket. I think, yeah, that's it. That's all. I could just watch that for forever. Now, all of that tree sap that you saw us pump in actually ended up with, I believe we have 43 pints of actual maple syrup. Now there is one more step. Once it reaches this step right here, then what we need to do is the final boil off, and that's where we really start to get scientific. We start to measure, we start to watch temperature so it doesn't burn, we watch color, we watch clarity, and then we sanitize our bottles, bottle up our maple syrup, and then we can give it to family and friends. So we're like this close. We're so close. We almost have maple syrup. Now, you can, in theory, use this, but it's still kind of watery. It's like a coffee consistency, a little less for me because I like my spoon standing up. I like thick coffee. But what we're going to do next week is we're going to talk about that final boil, and I'm hoping to do it live if I can. So fingers crossed that the weather works and that I have enough sap that we've got to this point that I can do a final boil and I can do it online live, and we'll talk about it. So thanks. Keep asking questions. Understand that maple syrup is time intensive. It's fun. There's so much science. And we'll talk more about it next week. Thanks. Have a great day. Keep asking questions. Keep doing science. And hope that we don't get snow this weekend. Bye-bye.